as três primeiras, Dr. Duarte Gomes.
Luís Casar.
E o professor. Depois a seguir vamos à segunda série.
Okay, I'm sorry for my English because it's not fluent, but my question is, it is or not a paradox when the companies, airline companies, invest in the electronic check-in, in internet check-in, and the airport companies invest in the shopping center, in the restaurant, is a paradox for me, because the passenger, when go to the airport, is to pass the minimum time in the infrastructure, and the shopping center. I think there's something wrong.
Is an airline guy.
Yeah. It's a very interesting question, because what you are seeing here is that actually airports and airlines don't always work into the same direction. Let's say the fact that so many airlines are investing into faster processes is, of course, is that they want to have the best product compared to other airlines. Let's say, I take the Lufthansa example because I know them best. They've taken a fortune of investment for online check-in, for check-in kiosks, for nice automated printing machines. They have invested in mobile devices whatsoever. So all those investments go into making the process faster. And that is kind of a reaction on the regulatory scheme that you have in aviation. Because, let's say, aviation works as long as it is faster than comparable modes of transportation. But what you've seen in the past 10 years is that because of security regulations, because of stronger screening at the security, because of stronger control here and there and everywhere, liquids or whatsoever, this actually the benefit of aviation is becoming smaller and smaller. And especially in the countries where you have an alternative, high-speed trains, good motorways, whatsoever, this is getting a more and more important factor, and especially at congested airport where you even take longer for this time. So from an airline rationale, competition factor, and trying to regain the advantage in travel time. I think those are the two rationales. The airport, yeah, you're right. The airport doesn't have the intention to make the process as fast as possible. He wants to have it fast where the airline would like to have it fast, but then he would like to retain this client, this customer at a certain spot. And let's say preferably this guy shouldn't go to the gate right away and wait at the gate, but preferably this guy should wait within the retail zone. And some airports are very drastic in that. I don't know whether you have gone through London Heathrow recently. They've completely refurbished Terminal 2, the one for Star Alliance, and there you go to the airport, you go through security, and then you are in the middle of a shopping center, and they don't announce the gate intentionally. All the gates are already assigned, the information is there, but they don't announce it. In order to leave the passenger within the shopping center and make him spend the one or the other or even more nice amounts of money, and then very briefly before the check-in process starts, they announce the gate, and then the people have to hurry because sometimes it's 10 to 20 minutes to the gate, and elderly people, handicapped people, and even the airlines complain because the people show up late. So again, a conflict to the airline, because that's the last that you want to see as an airline in London Heathrow, missing your slot. So there is a big conflict zone between airports and airlines, and that will remain.
It's okay? Luís Canário, por favor.
Queria agradecer a exposição da doutora Fátima. Pena é que tenha utilizado, desculpa, um pouco não é crítica, mas usou estatísticas baseadas em 2006, estamos em 2013, penso que podia ter refrescado um bocadinho os dados. Pronto, acho que sairia melhor. Num dos gráficos, num daqueles últimos gráficos em que teve a navegação aérea, eu só consegui copiar as colunas 0,32 e 1,12 em termos de exportações. Ora, temos a recente polémica da nave, que o tipo de negócio representa exatamente exportações. Penso que a navegação aérea, atividade e empresa, exporta muito mais que o que representava a aviação executiva. Julgo eu. Posso estar enganado, mas acho que a ordem de grandeza é diferente. Sorry, speaking in Portuguese. For Dr. Andreas Kraus, thank you for your presentation. Two questions. I don't want to be provocative, of course. Your opinion regarding, let's say, give me 3 causes for the successive postponed of the inauguration of the new Berlin airport. Second question, how do you comment the 2 days ago, 1 day ago, robbery in the airport, so professional style done? How can be the airport authority invest such amount on security and just crash the bench and that's it? Very clean, very professional. It's astonished, in fact. Thank you.
To answer the first question. Não sei se reparou, mas portanto os dados são de 2007, mas foi só esse ano que o INAC fez este tipo de estudo. Não há posterior. Okay? Portanto, foi um estudo feito em 2008, eu disse, com dados de 2007, o INAC não repetiu o estudo. Portanto, eu realmente não tinha dados mais
atualizados. Quer dizer, será que não se podem buscar dados mais recentes?
Não, este tipo de dados não. Eu explico porque isto foi obtido com base em inquéritos feitos às próprias empresas. Como imagina, se eu lançasse um inquérito, eu provavelmente não tinha respostas, nem conseguia em pouco tempo. Portanto, aqui são dados do INAC. Relativamente à diferença que referiu entre a nave e a aviação executiva, eu também não tenho responsabilidade daqueles dados, porque foi o resultado realmente do inquérito que o INAC fez. Está a ver? Portanto, daí que eu citei a fonte e o ano a que eles diziam respeito, exatamente porque não tinha, porque não há, não conheço, estudos a dimensionar o impacto do setor na economia portuguesa posteriores àquele. Tenho pena que o INAC não tenha repetido nos anos seguintes, tem feito outros estudos, mas não repetiu aquele era realmente o que eu tinha. Please. Yeah.
So Berlin is really one of my favorite topics. Now, this is one of a good examples to show that such a process is a very complex one and need to be very closely steered. So it actually began 15 to 20 years ago, and then we are again talking about the timelines. And at that time, everybody in Berlin was aware that the 3 airports in operation at that time will not facilitate the demand of the future. And they started it in a good way. They started a study for different locations within the region, and they focused it down, supported by consultants, by the way, to 3 different potential locations. One of them was Berlin-Schönefeld, so the existing airport, which is now being expanded. Yeah, this is not a new built airport, which is I always have to say that everybody thinking about this as a new airport. It is an extended old one. Yeah, and 2 different locations. At that part, I was with my former employer, and we were even part of the consultant team, and we recommended a completely new location, far off the city side, connected with high-speed trains to Berlin and to Leipzig, let's say in the middle of nowhere, but closely to the high-speed rail link. first, from my point of view, first strong decision is that they went for expanding the old GDR airport Berlin-Schönefeld, which was still very close to the city center and to the villages. Then they started a privatization process for this project. It ended up with two companies running up as final bidders, and both of them handed in very good master plans for how that should look like, very well established, nicely planned, good quantitative facts next to it, and one of that was supported by Vienna Airport, and the other one was a real estate investor from the western part of Germany. We at Lufhtansa Consulting were working on behalf of the Vienna Airport Consortium at that time. A very good and well-made concept. Then the city of Berlin stopped the privatization process because of one of the German bidders. There was kind of a discussion whether they were, let's say, getting informal information under the table. But what they did not do is restart the privatization process. But let's say, in order to avoid political repercussions, they said, okay, we have those nice two concepts. Thank you very much, private investor, for making that nice concept for me, but we will do it on our own as a state-run company. And then it's a critical situation because of the federal states in Germany. This location is actually tapping into two different states. It's Berlin and Brandenburg. It's another federal state. So they had to bring those interests together, form a new airport entity which wasn't existing before, and this one was given the task of you establish a new airport and you plan it, and they've never ever planned an airport before. And then they started the process. It took long, yeah, to fight it through the different legal layers in Germany, 20 years, yeah, almost 20 years. And in the meantime, let's say a lot of changes happened. And what we see now is, of course, let's say, the politicians are not able to steer such a project. That needs experts. So the supervisory board of this project is only held by politicians. It's the mayor of Berlin, it's the president minister of the country of the federal state of Brandenburg, it's some people from the Federal Ministry of Transportation, but it's a blame and a shame for the German engineering art, I would say, that because of this political discussion, this project is having such a bad image now. But let's say what I would still bring up in order to save the good reputation of German engineering is that you can be sure in China this airport would be already in operation and nobody would even think about that let's say emergency issues are of importance, that fire brigade regulations have to be accepted. That is a European Union legal environment that we have to stick to. And I've seen so many Indian new airports being in operation where I was really kind of happy to go out. That's Europe, yeah. But still, it's not a very nice.
And the robbery.
The robbery, I just. They must have help, yeah, help from insiders, from people working for the company. So this doesn't necessarily go in the normal way. I can only tell that Lufthansa as an airline, for example, they are having a lot of valuable goods, and they are transporting jewelry and diamonds from a lot from South Africa to Europe. And they are very well aware of the security situation, and those transports are never ever without dedicated people which are really next to the freight all the time. And if you transport so valuable goods and leave them alone without a very special security regulation, then you but still, let's say it's a shame, and I don't know how they actually received it, but they must have had internal help.
Well, I would like to ask two questions. One is it's related to the Portuguese situation. We have three main airports in the Portuguese mainland. One in Porto, another in Lisbon, and another in Faro. What would be the main advantages or disadvantages of having separate management of the three airports, assuming that we had good communications by land between them, say an high-speed rail network connecting the three airports, and people moving easily between them. So if this would be good for competition and lower prices and so on. And the second question is, there are some airports in France and also in Canada, especially regional airports. So this would be more applicable to our airport in the Faro and Porto, which don't have the hub operation is not so important as in Lisbon, in which those airports are managed by local associations of companies and so on, entities that are interested in local development. So they don't look at the airport as a private investor that wants to get as much profit as possible, but they tend to, that is secondary, and what they want is to attract as many people as possible to the region in order to promote economic development. Is this a model that has proved good or not, or what are your feeling for this?
So, first question, Portuguese airports and let's say
separated or together?
Separated management structures. Let's say you're coming from a history of having a joint management structure. So this is probably more efficient having one than having three. Yeah, very simple. And I see very few reasons why this should be split up into three once again. And the private investor will definitely not push for it. Yeah.
Okay.
So he is probably happy with having a centralized entity where you have a marketing once, which has a higher level, but facilitating all the different locations. And that needs to be looked at, or that what I would expect the private investor will do. He will look at which function is on a central basis, which function is on a regional basis. Of course, operations has to be regional, but everything that is administration, everything that is higher management can be together. Yeah. What I have not seen is even going a step further and thinking about this central management can not only be done in Lisbon, but that can actually be done in Paris for the overall investment companies. And this doesn't take place. Not to my knowledge. I've never seen that. What I've seen that in private groups is that the private investor is facilitating an exchange of know-how. Let's say at Hochtief, for example, all Hochtief airports, Budapest, Athens, Düsseldorf, Hamburg, Tirana, they have joint working groups for special topics, and they come together once every half a year to discuss, for example, airline marketing issues. Where were I successful in receiving a new carrier? Yeah, what was the lessons learned, and they share the knowledge, which is very good. Yeah, and so they tend to, let's say, focus on the incentive part.
So let's say the competition is between airlines and not between airports.
I wouldn't say so.
No, I was trying to interpret.
Yeah, sorry.
And the second part, the management by local organizations, assuming that the airports were separated, is it a bad idea or a good idea? Or?
Like is in France, for instance, Marseille, Nice, and so on. All concessions.
Yeah. Let's say in
Chamber of
France,
Commerce.
it has developed into that direction. In Germany, we have a comparable structure, not the chambers of commerce, but kind of the airport company is always its own entity, its own legal entity, but the shareholders behind are the cities or the counties around the airport. So also a local management. And that works well. If that is the history, and you can of course bring in a private investor like you did at many German regional airports, that works out fine. And this management still stays in place, even though there comes a part of a private shareholding. That worked out fine. And I don't necessarily see a need to change it.
And at the end of the day is also a question of dimension of the airports.
Yeah.
And our airports are not so big, far on the Porto, because the French Nice and Marseille, they are bigger airports with much more traffic. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So, o comandante Ivo, desculpe o seu nome.
Sérgio Silva.
Sérgio Silva, ok. Mais alguém? Desculpe.
João Durão.
João Durão, exato. Ok, então o comandante Ivo pode começar.
Okay, Dr. Andreas Kraus, first of all I have to say that I appreciate very much your presentation. And I would like to speak only about the question you did about the development in airport of the aviation and aviation business. What I think about this is if the economics of the airport are regulated in single till, we can say that all development on non-aviation business means lower taxes for the operators. Then we are, if we are investing money to develop the non-aviation business, we are giving the opportunity for the operators to operate the airport at lower fees. Of course, the operators has to invest in order to optimize and to increase the flow of the operations and so on. But on first view, they don't see any advantages on the investment on non-aviation business, but it's very important. Is the reason because almost all airports want to achieve at least 50% of non-aviation. But it's important for the operators.
Sure.
Of course.
No, I completely agree. Let's say the question how to treat the potential non-aeronautical revenues and whether to use them to decrease the charges. I think that has kept our researchers busy for years. Of course, let's say the trade-off is if you fix them to use it to decrease the charges, it will kind of change the overall marketplace, and it will impact the competition between airports. Because if you have a wonderful, let's say, non-aeronautical works well, where you have big airports and many passengers. If you have a smaller airport next door, who cannot, let's say, benefit from this options, yeah, then after introducing that, you will even be kind of beaten once again of being the smaller operator, and your business model will change, even though you are only, let's say, close to the bigger one. But so for the regional ones, that will be a huge kind of additional burden. For the big ones, just perfect, yeah. And yeah, there is no yes or no.
We made a visit together, Dr. Fatima and myself, to Luton.
Yes.
At the time, they had 55% of non-aviation.
Yeah.
And was what was the company's EasyJet? No, was EasyJet. EasyJet was operating on that airport, and they got very low fees in terms of fees because they could achieve 55% in non-aviation.
Yeah.
Then I think it's good to invest on shops and so on in order to get lower fees for the operators.
And of course, from the side of the airport, there are another point, that is to make the risk lower. Because if the airport depends only on the aviation side, if occurs the situation you said at Budapest, with the bankruptcy of Malev, The airport have a strong impact. If in other situation, if the airport have also good revenues from the non-aeronautical side, the risk is much more controlled. So is another important point. Okay. Sergio Silva.
May I make a comment regarding this point? The last Portuguese edition of Le Monde Diplomatique, page 24 until page 29, illustrates exactly what Commandant Ivo and what you're talking about. The airport infrastructure is enlarged, the non-revenue area is expediting the flow of passengers go to that areas to make a revenue. Page 24 to 29, last Le Monde Diplomatique Portuguese edition. Sorry for...
Okay. Sergio, please.
Thank you very much. In your experience, do you have the knowledge what are in the process of privatizing an airport, what are the areas that are most conflicting in the interests of mostly the state, which was the previous owner, and afterwards the private owner, like what are the most critical
where the two parties
in the aftermath,
discuss,
during the exploration aftermath of the infrastructure.
It is always, let's say, very dependent on how the contracts look like. So what we are seeing is that countries that really well prepared this process.
Yeah, and please, have there been bad experiences in this field?
Yeah, a lot of them. I can tell you some. Yeah, but countries that prepared that process very well, that had a strategy for the airports before they actually privatized it, and the strategy was kind of a given fact. Yeah, this is how the airports will develop. This is how the traffic will look like. This is what the capacity is that we require. And this is kind of our benchmark all the time. And we, of course, will have a look at the actual development and test it against our plans and make, let's say, decisions accordingly. And have a well-regulated economic and technical regulation in place. If that is working well, we see very few problems. Let me give you one example. I mentioned Zagreb. This is a good one because it's ongoing. Zagreb is being handed over to ADFERSIT, to Aéroports de Paris, and is being managed by them. Huge tender in Croatia, long process, and finally handed over to ADP. And they came in, they changed the organization a little bit, exchanged the top management, brought in some of the French guys. But very few changes, and then it said in the regulation that on March 31st, 2013, the construction of the new terminal has to begin. This is not going to take place because the traffic development actually wasn't in the line of the papers. The private investor, they came in with a very little share, but with the management contract primarily. And the private investor is now saying, yeah, you are stating that here in our nice paper, but it's not an obligation for me to construct. And the traffic hasn't grown as it should be, so why should I start the construction? And the state is saying, of course, hey, you signed this contract, so if you're not going to start the construction by end of March this year, we will run into a hell of a problem. And the Minister of Transportation, whom I met just recently, he said, okay, this wasn't my issue because this was actually done under the old government. Yeah. So that's going to be a very, very interesting moment. So everybody please have a look at Aviation News, beginning of April. I don't know what will happen, but that will turn out to be a major problem. So I expect the Croatian government to actually throw this company out because they haven't started the construction, and they would of course like to see the construction. So this is a